Hey guys, it's me Jacob again, and this is the 14th video in my series on studying JavaScript. If you watched my previous video, you would know that I was aiming to study 12 hours today. I did not end up doing that. I only got 7 hours done. It was hard to even get that. Uh, it has felt pretty uphill today, and I'm anticipating that maybe in the future it will be a little bit harder for me to continue to do some of this stuff, but I'm also pretty strong and pretty, I think all you need to do is sort of give yourself a little bit of a refresh, and you can do that by just going a little less hard for a couple of days, getting a nice amount of sleep, going a little bit less hard. When you're pushing for like, 7 and 9 hours and stuff like that, it can be like I did 9 hours yesterday, and I think that doing that kind of sets you up for being a little bit ground down the next day. So the fact that I got 7 hours is actually really good. It would have been cool if I could have gotten, 12. I'm still aiming to get 12 again in the future, but we'll take what we can get. We're a human being, and it's part of a process of becoming more and more optimal, right? There's all these like emotions that block you from doing stuff where you're just like, no, it sounds so boring. I don't want to do that. I'm tired, or it's like hard for me to focus, right? And so yeah, but that said, I got a lot of material moved an inch forward, right? And that's my style, right? Some people, they move maybe like even a couple meters forward with like one thing, or a couple things. I take like, a coastline, and I move like 10% of it an inch forward. And, at the beginning, it seems like nothing's happening. In the middle, it seems like nothing's happening. Eventually, though, it seems like you just have so much knowledge about all sorts of different random things, and it helps out with everything. So I'll tell you the things I've been focusing on. They're the same things I basically always talk about. It's CSS, it's JavaScript, it's HTML, it's React. And specifically to drill down deeper into those things, it's about React's components, elements, hooks, some of the different things like its internal life cycles, some of the different things like what it's really trying to accomplish with its reconciliation system, more or less like, I've got a lot more to go there, but like, what does a hook do? I've been thinking a lot about the relationship between JavaScript and HTML, and JSX and HTML, and React and the DOM and VDOM, how all of these things are sort of like doing something, but are all related together also, right? I've been studying event listeners and events. In React, there's these things called synthetic events. I haven't drilled down into them much, but I know of their existence. In, just JavaScript in general, the browsers provide web APIs, which are events for many, many different things. They're basically how you do almost all basically everything. It's very, very significant. So I've looked into that a little bit more. I've really kind of like glued together somewhat in my mind, like JavaScript handles events. HTML can't handle events. CSS can't handle events. JavaScript handles events. And it does something when an event happens. And you register JavaScript for a specific event through a specific way. And with React, it's just by using JSX and doing something like on click and then passing a function. But in old JavaScript land, it was like passing it to the HTML element itself, right? So I'm slowly building a more and more detailed picture, higher resolution map, and understanding how everything goes together. What about CSS? I specifically studied CSS Grid and CSS Flex. And when I say studied, I mean I read some dude's article about it, and I'll probably read it again tomorrow. or in 2 days or something. You know how I go? I do spaced repetition. And I know that I need to understand those things. I know that that's going to be the core of the CSS that I'm writing and doing. And so I just know that it's going to take time. Because if you're like me, reading something once is not enough, especially when it's something abstract and complex. You might have to read it 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times. I've read some things like, I don't know, 10 times, and the 10th time I read it, it's like I notice something different, or I remember things that I forgot, even though, like, it's not about memorizing everything, but you do need to have a lot of things memorized and a very deep intuition about them, right? Otherwise, you're going to be grasping at straws. You're not going to be able to really glue together the entire picture so that you can command and conquer the deterministic systems, right? It's complex stuff, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. The way everything interacts is complex, but that's basically the goal, right? Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of source code today too with JavaScript. The main things to note with that are there's a lot of shit I didn't really make much progress on, but there is some patterns that I have gotten even better at parsing, for sure. Especially some of the array-based ones, some of the object-based patterns, just like the prototype methods. I'm still in the dark about some of the promise things, especially the Bluebird promise versus the native promise. I've read a little bit about it, but I'd probably have to read it again to develop more detail and precision with that entire thing. I'm not super clear on... What else am I not super clear on? There's a lot of tests that I see in the projects that I read the source code for, and honestly, they kind of make sense, but, testing stuff feels like you have to read documentation for it too, and I'm not going to read test framework documentation yet. I may never read it. I probably will, but, and I'd probably just pick something like Jest, because that seems like the one that's maybe, I don't know. It doesn't really matter to me, but it's something to note. I have seen a couple of those different things. Yeah, so, I mean, it's been going okay. It's gonna take a while. The process of reading, I haven't even gotten through some of these projects. Some of these projects are like a megabyte, and to put it in perspective, I read a fair amount of source code, and I track all the source code I read, and I'm scanning it, and I'm reading it at a fixed speed, so I'm probably reading it way faster than anyone else would. Like, most people would be like, dude, why are you doing that? You're not remembering or grasping any of it. They wouldn't really understand what I'm trying to do and how it works, but I will guarantee this. Even at the rate that I read stuff, there are projects that are like megabytes in size, and it takes about a week reading at my process to get through like 3 megabytes. And believe me, the majority of that is in one ear, out the other ear. I've read through some projects 5 or 6 times, and it's not necessarily a game of memorization. Like, when you're talking about actual source code, you want to become familiar with certain things, but straight up memorizing them, that is too much, I think. So instead you memorize potentially like the most ubiquitous patterns, the overall like thing, and you become very familiar with stuff. So it's like, I've seen this file before, it's familiar to me, and I can understand it, but I forgot about it until I saw it right here again, right? There are limits, obviously, to reading source code. It probably has diminishing returns after a certain point. But, I think that I'm not even close to that. I don't think, I could definitely read through these projects, probably like up to, 10 times before there's really, really steep diminishing returns. 10 might be a bit much. 5, definitely. But because of the size of some projects, it's feasibly impossible, right? And because of the approach I take, I don't read one project at a time. I read like 9 or 10 different projects. And the whole point is I want to absorb a huge ecosystem. To me, JavaScript isn't your JavaScript code. It's not this one project's JavaScript code. It's the entire ecosystem's JavaScript code. Of course, it's impossible to actually consume all that at once as a basic uncybernetically modified human, right? But ultimately, that is actually where the truth is about what it really means to be JavaScript code. And I guess that's what I've called this series, and it is probably the main focus of everything because it's just at the core of what programming the web is. But CSS is way up there too, because no one wants to see some piece of shit looking website, and it's like a really relevant thing how you present information, and it's like pulling teeth if you don't understand it well. You can obviously figure out. I mean, I've made a bunch of decent things with basically very, very low level understanding, but that will go away. CSS definitely does feel like you can just memorize it. It's not too much information, but it's a lot. So anyways, this is actually the second time I recorded this video. I'm trying to keep it shorter because I tend to just ramble, and I really don't have that much to say. I'm just going to keep with the grind. My goal is clear. I am trying to build more detailed maps and understanding of many of these concepts. I need better vocabulary with it. I need to have a better internalization of some of the different things. I need to be faster at recognizing the syntax. And, so anyways, it's a work in progress, but I'm really happy about where I am now, and I'm very optimistic about where it's going. And so, yeah, if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching, and I would really love to get some actual feedback or like a message from some people. That'd be cool. That's kind of the point of this entire thing. But I would also love if you visit my blog, but I'd much rather get a message from people than just get more faceless traffic to a blog, right? I am planning, my blog is at pieharbor.com. I am planning on significantly improving that. I've already done a refactor. That's already basic. I mean, it's basically in some ways the focus of this channel, but really this channel is more about me. But I believe that what I'm about is going to be deeply reflected through this channel and my blog through both of those mediums, right? I'm about programming. I'm about trying to get better and better at it. And, now I guess I'm a bit of a content creator too. And I think that that's one of the main ways that I could improve my blog is by editing it, improving some of the CSS for the text formatting, improving all of the images I have. I have a new, slightly improved system so that the images can be much, much more pleasing. And those are just some of the simple improvements that I could make. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes some creativity, but it's probably worth doing. So there's going to probably be another blog refactor, but it's not going to be a programmatic refactor nearly as much as it's just going to be a content creation. There is going to be a programmatic refactor probably down the road because of how deeply I'm going into JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. The logical conclusion is to apply that to the blog to improve it, right? And then to write about it. Probably going to make, I have so many projects that I get in the woodworks, but one of the things I've noticed, and this is a ramble, I was going to try and keep this short, but I do want to talk about this idea real quick. One of the things I've noticed is that oftentimes when you're working on a project, you might hit a sticking point where you're like, man, this is pretty hard for me to get past this thing because I'm incompetent. And this is the time to not try and hack things together, but to go and fundamentally address your incompetence. And that's what I'm doing, right? So I have worked on some projects recently, and I realized like I really just don't have the chops to make this happen nearly as cleanly and effectively as I'd like. And what this would require is just a systematically better front end engineer. And that's what I have to be, and that's what I will become, and that's what I am becoming. And that's the whole point of this. Some people, I think, get caught up in doing very shallow exercises or just repeating things they already know over and over and over again until eventually they're like completely out of ideas and they're creatively bankrupt because they're like, I have no other things to do. And so doing stuff like what I'm doing, where you significantly spend time studying instead of implementing, applying, and whatever, being creative with it, is a really good balance. It's like creativity comes from something, and that is from like these weird things that you've been capturing in your mind and slowly developing and a growing understanding, but you haven't been taking it and like putting it onto something, putting it into a project, dumping it into the world. And so I feel like there's probably going to be a spring of creativity that, and this has happened to me before, where after these periods of intense struggle and study and challenge and growth, you have a new reservoir of untapped creative potential that you are now going to have access and unleash. And so, but yeah, thanks for tuning in. The most important thing is that you stay healthy, stay motivated, try and keep doing something good and hard for yourself if you can. Push yourself to do something good. And thanks for watching, and peace out.